And thank you for staying with us. It's time for Opinion Court. Get in touch with us, 22422. That is our SMS line. I'm going to start our conversation with just responding to that bit of breaking news that's come in. Youth Fund Board Chair Bruce Odhiambo stepping aside over the, of course, the issues that have besieged that fund and generally everything that was under former CS Anhoiguru's docket. Charles, let me start with you. Your thoughts on that?
I think it's high time that he's stepping aside. In fact, this is what more public officials or officers should be doing. Not any mere allegation should make you step aside, but any serious allegations, when investigations start showing a possibility of culpability, then you should step aside and you shouldn't wait to be edged out. I think he's made the right decision. Stepping aside is not an admission of liability. You are allowing the investigators to do their work. So it's high time he did it, and I think the country will be pleased. We now wait to hear the outcome of the investigations, the ones ongoing in Parliament, the ones by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Yeah, and of course, I beg your pardon because I didn't introduce you, Charles. Charles Kanjama is an advocate of the High Court, and Edward Kisiangani is our resident political analyst. Prof, is it coming a little late in the day?
I think so. In terms of resignation, I think he has done the correct thing. That is what we need to do in respect to our constitution. So that is correct. Doesn't mean that he's guilty, but he has done the correct thing and saved the public a lot of anguish. But in terms of timing, I think it has come too late. If you look at the problems at the National Youth Service, started last year, generally the National Youth Service docket and then the Youth Fund. And I think we expected them, everybody, not even just Bruce or Odhiambo alone, to take responsibility and say there are queries which are being raised by the public that pays us, so we really need to step down until the investigations are over. So it's a good example. Even if it has come late, it's the right thing to do. Do
you have confidence in EACC's ability to get to the bottom of this matter? And might I add all other, investigating bodies, the CID, etc.?
I think if you look at the laws that establish the EACC, I think in terms of having the real power to prosecute and take decisions they don't have. You have had in the recent past some of the EACC people getting directions from public servants and even the executive, when the president told them to do certain things within 6 days. If the law was very clear that they can't get those instructions, they would even have stopped him. So as long as the laws have certain loopholes to be exploited by those involved in graft and other crimes within our economy, it might be very difficult for them to do the investigation. In fact, recently, I was on the streets and somebody was saying EACC is a clearing house for criminals. They go there and when you want to go, you go and justify your case. You can even sponsor your own arrest. And once they get you there, you can argue a case and come out. So I think at the legislative level, they need to be empowered more. They need to have a proper financial independence on their part, and maybe they can deliver. But as currently constituted and with the legal weaknesses within the establishment, I don't think they have the capacity to deal with the crisis of corruption in this country.
Charles, are those your sentiments, and especially surrounding the NYS scandal and the Youth Fund scandal?
I think, and there was a recent judgment of the High Court or ruling just about 2 weeks ago, where a High Court judge affirmed the independence of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and declared that the president was not right in giving directions to EACC. I think there's no one institution or commission in Kenya that can work alone. It requires the support of other institutions. The judiciary, at least in this instance, came out to affirm the independence of EACC. We see they now have new commissioners. And again, the judiciary affirmed that to safeguard the independence of the institution. The commissioners need to be allowed to work. They are commissioners. They are the ones who have to be involved in interactions with external bodies. I think we need to give time to the new commissioners who've barely been in office even 3 months, so that we can see whether they will affirm the institutional strength, might and ability of EACC in doing investigations. I think it's premature to say that they will not reach a definite conclusion. Definitely there is that back and forth that tends to happen between the Ethics Anti-Corruption Commission and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. But part of that is a deliberate statutory or legal design to ensure that no one institution has all the powers of investigation and prosecution. It's for purposes of checks and balances. I don't think it should be perceived as a weakness of EACC. EACC can work on its own. It doesn't need to work with the Director of Criminal Investigation. They can collaborate. So I think they have the powers, and we are putting the ball in their court and telling them, prove to us that you are able to carry out credible investigations, come up with possible outcomes which you can give to the DPP for prosecution.
Right, and of course that's just reaction to that piece of news coming into our newsroom that Bruce Odhiambo, who has been the embattled chair of the Youth Fund, now stepping aside. He says he's away on a private visit, but will be available to answer any questions regarding the allegations of impropriety at the fund. Let us now switch gears to our main topic of discussion tonight on Opinion Court, and that is, do you think the IEBC as currently constituted can conduct a credible election? Let me introduce our third guest now in studio, Felix Odhiambo. You are the Country Director of the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. And given the backdrop of the numerous allegations that have also been meted out against IEBC, what is your response to that question? As currently constituted, can it carry out a credible election?
Thank you very much, and thank you for your invitation. I think the question should be, is Kenya ready for credible, free and fair elections?
No.
If an election was to be held today, and to be honest with you, the answer to that question is no. And elections extends beyond casting the ballot. And in as much as we went to 2013 elections with new constitution and new institutional framework. Now, the experience with that election demonstrated one fact, that both the law and the institutions, there were numerous shortcomings in both the law and the institutions that were charged with the responsibility of managing that election. And yes, IEBC plays a primary role in that responsibility.
But by rephrasing my question,
yes,
you are suggesting that it is not the only one
absolutely
that is charged with carrying out a credible election.
Yes, and if elections were to be held today, I don't think IEBC is in a state of readiness to hold credible polls for the following reasons. One, by their own admission, IEBC conducted a post-election evaluation through a task force that they formed that identified numerous weaknesses and shortcomings in that elections. The Commission, to the best of my knowledge, is in the process of implementing those task force, and they are very, very far away, to the point that if elections were to be held today, I don't think the state of the readiness of the Commission right now, there are laws that needs to be enacted, including regulations. There are also, the IEBC needs to change its structures. And yes, there are serious integrity issues that have been raised over the last few months, with the recent one being the Park report that IEBC must deal with and come clean out. So I don't think both the Commission and indeed the country is not ready for a credible poll if elections were to be held today.
Let's break down what you've said piece by piece. And first, you're talking about the legislation and regulations that need to be in place. Charles, what is missing?
There are several legislative amendments that are in the pipeline. Already the Chief Justice said, for example, regarding the Supreme Court and the presidential elections, that 14 days that have been given under the Constitution to conduct a full hearing, a presidential inquiry, is too short, and he wants it to increase to 30 days. That would require a constitutional amendment. That is missing. We know that the timelines in regard to, for example, the nomination period, the question of MPs who always try to jump or hop from one party to another just before the elections, there are things that need to be tightened there. We are also aware that on the regulatory aspect, especially the regulations around some of the electoral crimes and the ability of the Electoral Commission to take action on their own are not strong enough. We saw in the case of Wetangula that IEBC actually was apprehensive about taking any action because it would interfere with the perception of fairness or impartiality that they are meant to have. So definitely there are legislative issues that need to be taken into account, not just in the Elections Act, even in the Political Parties Act. You've seen the attempt to amend the Political Parties Act to allow, for example, for party mergers. There are issues like to do with political party funding, discipline of political parties. So actually the entire legal ecosystem, after the elections, the judiciary and the other stakeholders in the legal justice system on elections went through a review after the electoral petitions. They identified shortcomings. They have made proposals for amendment or for legislative improvement. Those are still in the pipeline. Our hope is that in the course of this year, probably in the next 6 months or so, this will be taken care of.
In general, that seems like a tall order for Parliament, which hardly ever raises that two-thirds requirement to amend the Constitution. So 6 months may seem a little rosy to those who've observed Parliament quite closely. But let me ask you this, because your answer focuses on the laws that are necessary. But the question really points out to IEBC as it is currently constituted. Do you think the commissioners, in the way that they have carried out their mandate so far and dealt with the quote-unquote credibility issues that Felix has raised, do also meet that threshold of persons who can actually discharge their functions fully?
And I think the answer to that question tends to depend on what political inclinations or views the Kenyan has. And different Kenyans have different views on this matter. There are those who believe that the IEBC has totally failed, especially those who tend to be affiliated to the opposition. And there are those who seem to be rather satisfied with IEBC.
But from a legal standpoint,
yes.
When they have come out, for instance, today, defending blow by blow why it is, they reached the conclusion they did over Okoa, Kenya. So, legally speaking, do you believe that the IEBC commissioners currently in place have, been above board in their conduct?
I would have to go through a history from the presidential election petition and the responses of the advocate of Isaac Hassan, for example. From that time, there have been perceptions that have been created about probably partiality to one side. But what I would like to say is, if you go back and you see how these commissioners were appointed, you will find that they were appointed as a product of a very politically inclusive process, so that when they came into office, they had the full confidence of Kenyans. Sometimes, though, when you're a referee in a football match and the match ends and one team is declared the winner, the team that has lost, maybe you awarded a penalty against the losing side, they are likely to think that you're not a fair referee. And those are issues that IEBC themselves and the commissioners are aware of. They need to rebuild confidence. What I would like to say, Anne, is that in the event something was done with the current commissioners and maybe they were sent home, or a process of recruiting fresh commissioners came up, under the first schedule of the IEBC Act, you will find that the process will be even more favorable to the ruling coalition, Jubilee, because the selection panel, for example, that recruits or at least interviews the commissioners, has 7 members. 4 of them will be appointed by the president. So already you notice
so we're better off now.
The opposition are kind of like better off if they think about it historically, because they played a bigger role. The prime minister appointed 2, president appointed 2, JSC appointed 1, APSEA 1, but now the president will appoint 4, Judicial Service 1. This is of the selection panel. When they shortlist, assuming they were to appoint new commissioners, they would have to go to this parliament for approval. This parliament is dominated by Jubilee.
You think that's why Jubilee is now, quote-unquote, not comfortable with the current IEBC?
Let me put it this way. If I was a chess player and I was Jubilee, I would probably be looking forward to increased agitation by CORD to change the commissioners, because I know that I will be the one to pick and choose. And if I'm CORD, I would probably have to think 2 steps ahead. What happens if we succeed in removing these commissioners? Who's going to put the next commissioners? Will we have a stronger role as we imagine we'll have today? Will the new commissioners who come in have a stronger institutional backing for a more integral, more fair electoral process than the ones who've been here for 5 years?
Interesting points, Charles. Prof, what do you think?
I think, Charles, which team do you support?
Arsenal or Chelsea? Let me favor him that way.
Because we're talking about football. But I think he is raising fundamental questions about this matter. I think, as currently constituted, I think it depends on the scale of 1 to 10. What do you mean by, credible and fair elections? But they are challenged in a number of ways. And I want to say this, and the challenges that IEBC faces are not the making of IEBC. So my sympathies go down and go out for them. In fact, if you look at the presentation of the learned lawyers here, I think the problem of IEBC is Parliament. In fact, anybody who discusses IEBC minus Parliament, you tell them to stop wasting your time. Parliament, everything that happens at IEBC emanates from Parliament. Parliament does not pass very good laws on integrity. And when somebody is beaten in an election, he says, I've been beaten by a guy who was a thief. Then you say, who passed this law that allowed thieves to stand? He say, IEBC has allowed thieves to win the elections. So at the legislative level, the biggest problem in Kenya today is Parliament. Parliament has led us down in a big way. They will tell you, like we have had in some forums, that they want IEBC to be disbanded. Look at it, Anne. And
so we shouldn't expect legal reform, as a way to ensuring a credible poll?
You see, Kenyans must now start re-examining the role of Parliament. I think if you ask me the kind of reforms that we want in this country, even if it means going to a referendum, is to say, do we still think that this Parliament under the current laws can deliver to the Kenyan people? I think if we question that, probably we will get somewhere, because Parliament has taken us, we are kidnapped. All of us have been kidnapped by Parliament. And Parliament passes things the way it wants. Right now you have been told that they want a commission. Look at the Kericho and Malindi elections. Both sides suggested that the IEBC should be disbanded.
Right.
Yes. When they say that, what do you read of it? Because each one, when one wins the election, he praises IEBC. But look at both sides. CORD is comfortable by winning the elections in Malindi. It says, okay, we are okay. But now Jubilee wins in Kericho, it says we are okay, but when it loses in Malindi, it says you should disband. So this is the problem. These guys have only one way. They don't even accept to lose elections. So at legislative level, we have a problem. But also there is the question of finances, and the problem of finance is critical. Look, the last time we heard about the registration of voters, part of the problem, you can blame it to anybody, but part of the problem with this poor registration is there is no money for voter education. And so there is no money for voter education, but you say people should have not registered, so we don't care about it. There are people who already know, because they were not able as parliamentarians to give IEBC a lot of money to carry out this registration process. They know they have already lost the elections in 2017, but they will still say IEBC has stolen has rigged the election. Okay. So in a nutshell, and I'm saying, my heart goes out for them. They are now the bunch backs. Everybody's punching them. But really, the problem of Kenya today, the biggest problem of Kenya today is the Parliament.
What, Felix, would you then say if Parliament is in fact the biggest problem to legislative reform, to strengthen IEBC? What is the bare minimum that can bring us a credible poll and bring to bear, if you would, your Africa-wide experience?
Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, let me say that there is some progress that has been made by Parliament. The legislations that Charles talked about, there are two bills in Parliament as we speak, the Election Law Amendment Bill of 2015 and the Political Parties Amendment Bill of 2016. These two legislations are intended to reform or amend the Elections Act and the Political Part Act with a view to correcting it. Secondly, I agree with Charles to the extent that despite whatever challenges that IEBC may be facing, I don't think disbandment is an issue. I don't, for two reasons. One has already been mentioned, that the Schedule 1 of the IEBC Act actually gives the President an incumbent, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta will be an incumbent seeking re-election in 2017 to appoint 4 out of the 7 commissioners. Too much power? To appoint the selection panel that then kicks the process of appointing the successor commission to this commission. The second point also is, I think it would be very catastrophic for this country to go into the next poll, given the stakes and the competitive nature of 2017 elections with a bunch of new and untested commissioners. I think this would be catastrophic. The closest we ever went to civil war was actually in 2007, where it was partly blamed on the new appointments that were unilaterally made there. In terms of the reducible minimum, the question is, first, and I agree, there is significant goodwill on the part of the Commission. We have a new CEO in the Commission that I think is really trying his best. And there are so many commissioners and the staff of the Commission, the various departments who are toiling day and night to try and reform and improve the electoral process. But the truth of the matter is, 4 things must be done. Number one, the IEBC must fix voter registration. Now, if you look at elections in the continent, rigging or electoral manipulation begin at the voter registration level. And in the question, there are a number of problems that surround the current register, whether it is authoritative, accurate, etc. The second thing is we have to determine what technology we want to use in the next poll. The third issue is there has to be serious reforms on results management. What happens when you cast your ballot? And finally, the determination of election disputes. All right. Prof, final comments, brief.
Yes. What we really need to do is we must, as a republic, demand that the IEBC is enabled, given the necessary resources to do its work right. It can't be halfway on. It must be given the necessary resources, and we do that. And even the people who are saying, okay, at every mention of an institution that has some corrupt people, or probably perceived corruption, we say, cut them out. Tell me 4 men and 4 women who are so credible within the opposition or within the government who will take over IEBC and do a better job than what IEBC is doing. Oh. Tell me.
Wow. And that's also kind of sad. Like, are you saying, like, the pool to pick from is that muddy?
Yeah.
Wow.
Let me say something.
Surely there must be some Kenyans with integrity out there.
I am them.
You know, I won't. Charles.
Yeah, let me say this. I think as Kenyans would fail if we become so obsessed on IEBC's role, which is a critical role, and forget that IEBC is part of what I would call an electoral ecosystem. The entire electoral ecosystem, as my colleague Felix has said, is critical, and we have to look at it if we want to have credible elections. This includes the security forces, who are the ones who manage the security around election time. This includes the political parties and the players themselves, the politicians, the ones who are campaigning to ensure that there's no hate speech, there's no speech that is intimidating, discriminatory, introducing fear, and so on. So in other words, we must demand of the IEBC that they up their game, but we must remember not to forget all the other players of the electoral ecosystem who will make or break the election, either by eroding the integrity and confidence of Kenyans in the other institutions, or by supporting them.
I thank you, gentlemen, for your views. Felix Obiambo, Country Director, Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa, Charles Kunjama, Advocate at the High Court, and of course Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. We're taking a short break. We're back with more news after this. Stay with Citizen Live at 9.